There it is, my friend.
There you go.
Nice. Just got to share these to the socials real quick because I got to run the board stuff here. Man, usually I do the show with Jeff. So, of course, he's doing the chit chat while I'm trying to do the sharing stuff here.
Yeah.
So I got to try and get this figured out. But man, I appreciate you hopping on, though, man. I know it's kind of, I talked earlier in the week, but, I didn't give you much notice. But you're nice enough to say, hey, let's do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like anything for you, for, the WCG guys. So,
oh, man, I appreciate
no
it.
problem at all. Yeah.
All right. Twitter is shared. Facebook is shared.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to retweet it real quick.
All right. So you want to do a podcast?
Let's roll.
All right. What is up, Chicago Bears fans? This is T-Formation Conversation. I'm your host, Lester Wiltfong. I am joined today by a very special guest. He is our guy, the lead draft analyst at Windy City Gridiron, Jacob Infante. Jacob, what's up, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Lester. Any chance I get to talk about the draft's a fun one. So, it's nice to be back on the show. Nice to feel like my draft analysis is actually wanted this time of year, as opposed to like I'm posting something in August. They're like, "Oh, it's too early. What are you doing? Get the hell out of here!" So,
it's funny, a little behind the scenes stuff. We had this type of conversation all the time.
Yeah.
Draft season never stops. I mean, Bears fans, NFL fans in general, they love it. I get it. It's too much for some, and for me too. Like I step away. I'm not really interested in deep dives into the draft, like you said, in August. But man, every time you put a mock up, every time you do a player profile, that stuff is like hitting. People read it, people retweet it. They go on social, they go on Facebook, talk about it. People love the draft.
Yeah.
You got to give the people what they want, and that's what Jacob does.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm grateful to, play some sort of role in the draft coverage that people digest on here, on Bears, the Bears community and the draft community in general. So it's my favorite time of year. As I love, obviously, like the actual regular season itself. I love sitting down on a Sunday and watching games, but I also really love just, breaking down players and the anticipation of, there are so-and-so needs on these teams. Who's going to go where? The unpredictability of it all is a lot of fun to me. So, I'm happy that stuff's ramping up here.
Yeah, it's draft season. The East-West Shrine game happened. The Senior Bowl happened. And of course, the Super Bowl happened. And all those three spots are huge gathering places for the NFL. Obviously, the previous ones are all about the draft, the prospects. But then you start getting the buzz building, the Super Bowl week, the media row. It's not just Chiefs, 49ers. A lot of Bears talk was going on down there. A lot of draft talk was going on down there. And with the Bears, man, 2 picks in the top 10, 1 and 9, with a trade of some sort going to happen. We're not sure what, but a trade of some sort is going to happen. So it's an exciting time to be a Bears fan, whether you're on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle, so to speak. So we'll talk about the quarterback briefly, but this is not about the quarterback. This is about the draft. We're going to do some draft Q&A here in a little bit, so you guys get your question into YouTube. But before we jump into the Q&A here with Jacob, we got to talk a little bit about the Bears' current team needs, because once we have the needs out of the way, we figure out what some options are possibly in free agency. We'll have a better idea what they're going to do in the draft, because last year they went into the draft with a big hole at right tackle. So that kind of told us, they're going to do something early, and they did. Darnell Wright came in, home run pick, did a great job there. So let's talk about the Bears right now. Where do you see right now as their biggest positional need?
So that's a tough one because I could really go in a bunch of different directions. I'm thinking they need a bona fide wide receiver too. They have DJ Moore, who had a fantastic first year in Chicago, and Cole Kmet is proven to be one of the better tight ends in the league. But a wide receiver, you're looking at Tyler Scott and Velus Jones as the only 2 guys under contract heading into this new year outside of DJ Moore. So Darnell Mooney's gone. The Chase Claypool thing didn't work out, obviously. So there's a pretty sizable need at wide receiver too. And especially, I think in a more pass-heavy offense with new offensive coordinator Shane Waldron coming over from Seattle, I expect that wide receiver 2 role is going to be a big one in that Chicago offense. And they don't really have someone who's proven that they can take that next step and secure like that 100+ targets a year type of role. So whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, I feel like they're going to make some sort of significant investment at the position. And honestly, I think they should. So I'm excited to see who it's going to be, but I do think that receiver stands out as a massive need at this stage.
I'm not sure if you put it on the side or if you put it on your Twitter account, but I think you mentioned a double dip for sure. You think they're going to definitely go in the draft, probably early, maybe with that number 9 pick. But like you said, this team has a desperate need for another veteran receiver. Like you said, it's DJ Moore. I mean, that's really all it is right now. I mean, I like Tyler Scott. I think he's a good prospect. I think there's some hope there for him to kind of develop into something. But at this point, if you look at the roster, you'd like him competing for that number 4 spot. Top draft pick comes in, they compete 2 or 3. Mike Evans has been floated out there, Buccaneers. You hear T. Higgins. There are a lot of receivers that are available in free agency that can kind of step in and kind of fill a role here in Chicago. And then you have your rookie come in. Those guys battle it out for targets. DJ Moore is, of course, the top dog. But, this is not going to be a super run-heavy offense, regardless if it's Justin Fields or a rookie quarterback. Shane Waldron's, he will form the offense on his talent, but he's going to throw the ball a bit more than what we've seen here in years past.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that in some capacity, they're going to make some sort of investment at receiver and free agency, whether that's, like you mentioned, a bigger name like a Mike Evans or a T. Higgins, or maybe more of a wide receiver 3 type, like a Curtis Samuel, a Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
Even a Hollywood Brown, I think could be someone worth looking into. So I do feel like they are in need of some sort of veteran presence in there that they currently don't have, assuming they don't re-sign Darnell Mooney, which I don't necessarily expect them to. But yeah, I do think that in some capacity, there's going to be investment in both free agency and the draft. And even in the draft, I'd be fine if they take 2 receivers in this group. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it, but I think this is a really talented and really deep wide receiver class. So, say you get someone at 9 and then you add on someone in round 4, round 5, something like that. I think you're really working with something there.
Yeah, just a reminder, guys, we are going to take some questions after we go through some of these Bears needs here. So if you have any draft questions for Jacob, throw them in the comment, and we will make sure we try and get to as many as possible here before we get out of here. But so today the Bears cut a couple of veterans. One was a guy who's reserved, Cody Whitehair at guard. I think guard is something the Bears need. Yeah. But they cut their starting safety, Eddie Jackson, which is something we all thought was going to happen. He was making just way too much money for the productivity on the field. He had a nice career in Chicago. Made sense to move on. Safety's probably in need when you look at this roster right now. But they had a guy last year as a rookie at cornerback who got some safety reps in camp, and Terrell Smith. Do you think he's a guy that can kind of maybe get a look there once camp opens up?
I mean, I think that would make a lot of sense, just naturally, especially if the Bears re-sign Jalen Johnson, whether it's on the tag or a full extension.
That's coming. That's got to happen, right?
Yeah. To some extent, I feel pretty confident Jalen's going to be on the Bears in 2024. I just don't know exactly how yet. So with that in mind, you have your top 3 corners. Ideally, you have them locked in for the next 2 years, with Kyler Gordon on his rookie deal, and then Tyreek Stevenson still has 3 years on his rookie deal. There isn't really going to be a path for Terrell Smith to start, which is interesting when you consider, the flashes that he showed as reserve, stepping in for injured players in the secondary. And I do think safety could be an option for him. I know that was something that was kind of floated around in the pre-draft process last year. A big part of it was, his sharpness coming in and out of his breaks isn't great for a corner, but for a safety, keep in mind, you don't necessarily have to be as sharp in terms of changing immediate direction. Some of your movements are a bit more elongated, I guess is a way you could put it. And Terrell Smith is plenty athletic. He's fast and he's big and he's physical. So naturally, a move to safety could make sense. I would expect in some capacity they bring someone in free agency. I'm not a big fan of this safety class in the draft. I mean, if you can't get anyone in round 2, then probably the value is not going to be great. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Terrell Smith could be an option at safety. I mean, certainly it would be a better opportunity for him to get more playing time. And, if everything works there, it's one less position that you need to invest in significantly this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, Flus is not. He's Tampa 2-ish. He's not exclusively Tampa 2. He'll do some stuff with cover 3, cover 1. So if Smith's a guy that has coverage skills, and you want to roll him down, maybe cover tight ends out of the slot. I think he has that kind of skill set. He's not. He's not going to be nickel for you, but I think if he can come down and kind of match up against some receivers that kind of go in the slot. This is not old school where it's just your small shifty guy in the slot anymore. Teams are rotating whoever they want in the slot, looking for matchups. And if you got a guy like Smith in the field that you're comfortable with playing him in a one-on-one situation or matching him up in a match zone or something like that, I think you do it with Smith. And like I said, the draft, is not the best here for safety, but let's go one more defensive position, and that's defensive end. Some of the mock drafts have the Bears going edge at 9. If they're not going receiver, they're going edge.
Yeah.
But I can't see the Bears going into the draft without addressing a little bit. And just today, a Cap mentioned on his podcast that Daniel Hunter, who we've kind of heard linked to the Bears this last week, some buzz at the Super Bowl about that. He talked about it too today on his show, that he has heard that Daniel Hunter is a guy that the Vikings may not go after to re-sign, and the Bears would probably have interest there. 28, 29 years old, a little older, but he still gets it done.
Yeah, no, totally. And I feel like with Hunter, you're not going to, at least you probably shouldn't get like a full 5-year deal or something like that, because he's in his prime right now. You're not paying for what he will be. You're paying him for what he is.
Yeah.
So if that means maybe a little bit like a 3-year deal, I think is reasonable. That gives him an opportunity to potentially get another decent payday before the end of his career, while still paying for someone who probably will be one of the top edge rushers over the course of that contract. I mean, this year he was fantastic. He's been a consistent force for the Vikings over the last few, his entire career, essentially, in Minnesota. So he'd be someone I'd definitely be interested in. Obviously, him being a little bit older for a free agent, you have to go in with a little bit of caution, and I feel like Ryan Poles knows that. He's been pretty risk avoidant in terms of how he invests big money into players who are over 30 or are going to be over 30. But at the same time, I mean, Danielle Hunter's coming off an incredible season, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I know he's reached double-digit sacks a handful of times, and when you're looking at what the Bears have off the edge right now, they don't really have that solidified edge rusher alongside Montez Sweat in the starting lineup. So they could go edge rusher in the draft at 9. There'd be value there, but I really think that, especially with not just Hunter, but some of the other edge rushers in this free agency class, I really think it'd be better to invest in someone, somewhere in the range of that $10 to $15 million a year. Obviously, if it's Hunter, you're going for more than that, but like a Jonathan Grenard from the Texans, Bryce Huff from the Jets, just as a couple guys. Someone like that, I think, would be a good addition to the defense too. But it's a solid group of edge rushers in the draft this year. A little top heavy. I mean, the depth in day 2 isn't all that great, but there are probably 4 guys I think go round 1, and then as many as 3 that I think could go in round 2. So it'll be interesting. I feel like the value is definitely better in free agency, but yeah, I mean, like you said, with these mock drafts, I mean, if the Bears aren't going wide receiver at 9, they're going edge in most of them.
So your top 100 just came out earlier this week. Who was your top edge you had on your board?
So right now I've been kind of rotating it a lot because I can't really decide. Right now it's Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. I think that his athletic ceiling combined with the tape that he's had is the best combination in this class. You're looking for pure speed rushers. I think Turner and Chop Robinson out of Penn State are the two top guys, but Turner's more polished at this stage. He's a more refined defensive player. And I think that upside is going to see him get drafted pretty early. And, it's tough to determine because Jared Verse from Florida State's close. I have, all the top 3 edge rushers are pretty close on my board. They have somewhat similar grades. So Verse, I feel like he's the safest of the top 3 edge rushers. Latu out of UCLA. He's put together some really impressive tape the last 2 years. Super flexible, great use of the hands, but again, it comes down to the injuries. He had to medically retire a couple of years ago. What are the medicals going to show there? And that's going to vary by team, but there is some risk there taking him top 10, which I personally wouldn't do. First round, absolutely. Top 20, absolutely. But would you want to take that big of a risk on someone in the top 10? I don't think so. So right now, Turner's my top guy. I don't feel like there's a superstar prospect off the edge, like an Aiden Hutchinson or a Kayvon Thibodeau in, the last couple of years. I had very high grades on. I didn't have anyone to this level in this class, but it's still a handful of really good guys. So Turner's my top guy right now. I feel like Turner has the best chance to go top 10 just off of, him having the highest ceiling out of the bunch. And with Atlanta looking like a possibility at 8, the Bears maybe at 9. But all things considered, I think Turner's my top guy for now, but that might change.
Yeah, you talk about the medicals for UCLA's. How you pronounce the name? I'm terrible with names. Latu.
I've been saying Latu. That's how I've been saying it. Okay. Yeah, I need to do a better job of actually listening to the pronunciations on YouTube. Because I'll turn on the All 22 or something. There's no, there's no commentary.
No commentary, yeah.
And either that or if I'm watching a broadcast tape on YouTube, I usually have my own music or some other sort of video playing in the background. So I think it's Latu, but I'm not.
You mentioned his medicals. He did retire a couple years ago because of something with medical. He got cleared. I mean, yeah. We've seen it. It happens. Players have things happen. We're both wrestling fans, pro wrestling fans. We saw it happen with Edge. Edge was told to retire from the game. He was out of wrestling for a long time. Something happened. Who knows? I mean, the human body is a miraculous thing. Whatever happened. He has now been cleared by all the doctors that looked at him. And if those medicals check out, man, I mean, I am not grinding tape nowhere near the hours you're putting in. I just watch some highlight guys of guys that I enjoy. His tape is fun to watch. He is all hands and elbows, and he just spins. And if his medicals check out, man, this guy could be a good player.
100%. And you go back to the Edge thing. He had the neck injury that forced him to retire from wrestling for almost a decade.
Yeah,
Latu had to retire due to a neck injury in his time in Washington, and then he transferred to UCLA. They cleared him. So I mean, it's happened in athletics before. I mean, it happened with Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher who went from UCLA to Miami, and now is a starter on the Dolphins. So. Obviously teams are going to have to do their homework on that, but it's not impossible for him to, have longevity. It's not impossible for him to continue to perform at a high level.
One more need spot before we go to everyone's favorite topic, quarterbacks. Center. Yeah. Obviously the Bears having a problem at center. Cody Whitehair did retire today. He was one of their reserves. Lucas Patrick's a free agent. Dan Feeney's a free agent. Right now there's a big hole there at center for the Bears. I know a lot of it's going to be decided if they go with a rookie quarterback. You may want to go with a veteran, but I think regardless of what the Bears decide to do at quarterback, they cannot go into this draft with a hole at center because centers are weird, man. It's like the really, really good ones, second roundish. It's very rare to see a guy go early in the draft, and the Bears are at 9 anyways. They're the first round pick. Don't have a second round pick right now. Can you wait and get a center late? Probably not. So you're going to have to get a guy probably the guy that's been mentioned a lot because of the connection to Shane Waldron is Evan Brown from Seattle. Greg Gabriel wrote up a piece earlier this week. He talked about the kid Brewer from Tennessee also because there's a connection with the Bears assistant coach. There are some centers out there that the Bears can get just kind of a plug and play guy. Like, hey, you're the guy for now, but we're going to draft a guy. Do you see them draft? I mean, they have to draft a center this year, right? They have to draft a center.
Yeah, I feel like whether it's early on or later, it would make a lot of sense to, invest in some sort along the interior offensive line. I personally think that they're going to address it in free agency, and they're not going to enter the draft with a massive need at center. Just because of, there are a handful of quality free agents available. The guys you mentioned, Brewer, Brown, also like a Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos,
Yeah.
Andre James from the Raiders. I know Greg Gabriel said the Bears probably wouldn't go after him, but Connor Williams from the Dolphins, he's coming off an injury, but it was incredible this past year. So there are options for Chicago in free agency. They just have to be willing to, fork over, I want to say like a pretty penny, but centers are still relatively cheap compared to like an offensive tackle. And, obviously there's the more value at the tackle position, but, you can still get a very good center for a reasonable price. So that's what I think the Bears will do in free agency. But I do think that some sort of interior offensive line investment in the draft, whether it's a bona fide center or a guard who can play center or has played center, I think that make a lot of sense because we saw in Chicago, there's some injuries along the interior offensive line, both at center and guard. And, it forced guys to step into roles and, it disrupted the flow of the offense. So it's my belief, and I'm sure you're the same way, being an offensive line guy. You can never have too much depth in the trenches on either side of the ball. So I think that it would definitely make a lot of sense, whether it's a true guard, true center, swing man of sorts, for the Bears to make some sort of investment there in the draft.
Tyree Carter's still on this roster.
Yeah.
And we saw him last year get some run earlier for Nate Davis. And then as the year kind of progressed, Cody Whitehair lost his job at center. He now became your swing guard. So I understood them going with the veteran at that point. But do you think there's still hope for Tyree Carter? Do you think there's still some upside there?
Yeah, I still think there's some potential for growth there. I don't think that, at least at this stage, I don't think it's necessarily the smartest bet to assume, he's going to be a full-time starter one day. I feel like, the odds are stacked against him in that regard. But as far as being just a solid, versatile offensive lineman, a sixth man on the offensive line or a seventh man on the offensive line, I think there's still value with him there. I do expect him to, at the very least, compete for a roster spot this year. I feel like he'll probably make the team, saying that now without knowing what they're going to do in free agency or the draft. But, Carter had some flashes, especially in the preseason. He was very good. The regular season, had some sporadic playing time here and there. I still think there's room for him to grow. I still think that he will grow to some extent. Try and be realistic with the expectations, but at the same time, I feel like he could be solid depth going forward.
Yeah, we saw him last year play both guard spots. He got a little bit of run at right tackle as well. He was, of course, a left tackle in college. He doesn't have the right profile with the Bears looking for, but in a pinch, he was able to give some tackle stuff. There was some talk at the Senior Bowl that he was going to try and work at center. We have never really seen that. Obviously, the Bears don't have their practices during the year televised, and the beat guys can't really talk about some of that stuff. But there was some talk there. I think Carter's a guy that should always be in the mix because he is versatile. And I guess we got to talk about a quarterback here. So I think we're both in the same boat here. We're both fans of Justin Fields. I mean, we were excited when he was drafted. We enjoyed what he's done as a Bear. It's just a very unique opportunity. And we both think Ryan Poles is going to move off of Fields and go with the unknown in the rookie draft pick. I mean, is that kind of where your head's at right now?
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now too. And like you said, I'm a fan of Justin Fields. You're a fan of Justin Fields. And I truly do. I feel bad for him because, even if they do keep him. The circumstances through the first 3 years of his career in the NFL haven't been great.
Yeah.
It seems like, the first 2 years was just, a bad roster working with. Year two, new coaching staff, both in the first 2 years, bad offensive line. This year, there's some injuries. And then, he started to get going, but now the Bears have this opportunity where they have the first overall pick. It's not from their own selection. Like, it's not like they were bad enough to have the first pick on their own. It's coming from somewhere else. It's coming from Carolina. So it's definitely a very unique situation. I can't say I've really witnessed anything like this in recent years. I personally think that the direction the Bears are going to go is they're going to draft a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. I'm assuming it's going to be Caleb Williams out of USC, and then they trade Fields. And I feel like there's going to be a good market for Fields because you look at him. I feel like if the Bears don't have a top 2 pick in this draft, I think they're keeping Fields. I really do.
Same.
And
yeah.
It's just a circumstance of Caleb Williams is a really good prospect. Drake May is a really good prospect. There's some talks of Jaden Daniels from LSU being a top 3, top 2 pick even. But I really think that Williams and May are the crown jewels of this class. And, they're just unfortunately for Fields, the Bears have this unique situation where you don't really know what you have in Fields yet, which is weird. You've started him for 3 years. You don't really know if he's good yet. He's getting better, but you don't know if he's good. So that's something that I'm expecting Chicago to do. And I do believe that Fields is a more enticing option at quarterback than what a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a good handful of teams around the league currently have. And say if you're a Pittsburgh, if you're in Atlanta, and you don't have a clear option at quarterback, I feel like someone with Fields has much more upside than a Desmond Ridder or a Kenny Pickett. And I expect there to be, a bidding war. I mentioned those 2 teams. There are others as well.
Yeah.
But those are the first 2 that come to mind. The Commanders, even the Patriots, if they don't want to go quarterback at 2 or 3. So there are options. There are options for Fields. There are options for the Bears. I think they're going to draft a quarterback at 1. I could be wrong on that, but just the general reading that, it seems like we're getting right now is it's going to be a QB.
That's kind of how the general read was a year ago. All the national guys were on the Bears are going to trade 1. They got something in the works. And then, of course, the combine hit. It really ramped up. So I think by the time in 2 weeks, like I said, the combine's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think at that point, there's already feelers out there. But I think at the combine happens, that's when the Bears are going to finally meet all the top quarterbacks, their official interviews. They're going to set up some school visits, probably some pro days. They'll have some private workouts, I'm sure, with all the top prospects.
Yeah.
If they like what they see, I think they're just going to make a move. And I'm glad you mentioned that if the Bears weren't picking 1, you don't think they would trade Fields, because I was at Ashton. I feel the same way. If, like I said, circumstance dictates, it's a weird year.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation. They have a chance to do this. I can see paths for success both ways, but you're 3 years in. It's not the guy you drafted as Ryan Poles, even though it is what it is. And like you said, Fields has been screwed, man. His first year with Nagy, just a weird situation. Yeah. Come on. Why is he competing with these guys? Like what are we trying to recreate some weird thing with the Chiefs that worked once? Every situation is different. Then, of course, like you said, year 2, total rebuild. Year 3, just a weird situation with Getsy. I'm pretty sure that Fields is going to have some success wherever he goes. This is Ryan Poles. This is his main decision. This will define his entire career as a GM. We saw with Ryan Pace taking Mitch. That defined who he is as a GM. Same thing here. This decision will define Ryan Poles' career. If he gets it right, he gets it right. If he gets it wrong, he's probably out of a job in a year or 2. So let's take a quick break. And then the other side of that, we're going to start going through some of these questions on the draft with Jacob. All right, Jacob, that is the break. We are back into it. Jacob Infante, he is at Jacob Infante 24 Of course, you can find all his stuff on Windy City Gridiron. Like I said, his top 100 just dropped. And you also have a draft guide that you've done here. Not, I think it's your third year or fourth year doing your draft guide.
I think this is 3. I think this is year 3. I think so.
Where can everyone get that from you?
Yeah, so you guys can find that on my Patreon. I'm pretty sure it's linked in my, if not in my Twitter bio, then it definitely is on my pinned tweet. My pinned tweet is the Caleb Williams article I wrote. So the Patreon is linked in my Twitter bio. You can find it there for as low as $1 a month.
Come on, that's a deal right there.
Yeah, you get access to my draft guide when it comes out. You have access to all my audio clips for the prospect interviews that I have. I've had a few so far, and I have a couple more coming up on the horizon still. You get that. You get access to some other exclusive content. My small school rankings I've published over there. My top 30 players at specific positions. I've done quarterback, receiver, edge rusher, interior offensive line, I believe it was. So, some pretty important positions, particularly for the Bears. And I've provided, biggest strength, biggest weakness, and my current round grade. So there's a lot of stuff there. Obviously, a majority of my content's over at Windy City Gridiron, and that's where you'll continue to find it in this pre-draft process. But, if you're looking for like that little extra something to take your draft knowledge over the hump, or you just want to support me, which I mean, like, I'm just some schmuck, but if you want to be nice, please. So yeah, I mean, that's where you can find my draft guide and any other exclusive content that I have.
That's key, man. You got to support people in the game. You're putting the time in. Support Jacob, get his draft guide, help him out on his Patreon. It's good stuff. I mean, I get it. It's got a lot of information. I said, I don't grind film. I can't do it. I just don't have the time. Jacob's doing it, man. He's working full-time job. He's working his draft stuff full-time. You have no time for nothing. But I did see on Twitter, like, what is this Riz God? Is this the nickname floating around there? So I know you got some time for something.
Yeah, I find some time for the ladies. I'm here in my bachelor pad in the St. Louis suburbs. They're like, oh, all the girls are, oh, you're Jacob Infante from Twitter. So everywhere I go, the fame's overwhelming. So that's just day in the life of me. But nice. For real though, yeah. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I love the draft work that I put in, providing content for people, because it is time consuming, and I don't know, I'm just passionate enough about it that I like sitting down and spending the time to watch it. And if that helps other people learn, if that helps other people, get to understand the draft classes a little, then, I'm doing my job.
Let's jump into some stuff here. Got a few questions. JD Brown, any day 2 or day 3 safeties you like as a fit for Chicago? And you talked a little bit on the top here. Not a great class at the top, but you can usually find depth at DB in the later rounds.
Yeah, so there are a couple guys. I'll start on day 2. These guys are going to be round 2 players, or at least on my board. Cameron Kinchens from Miami is someone, he performed down at the Senior Bowl. He's my top safety right now. With these safeties that I'm going to name, I can go into specific breakdowns, but for a lot of them, I'm choosing them because they're those rangy free safety types that complement Jaquan Brisker, that Eddie Jackson played at his peak, that Eddie Jackson played when he was healthy. So Cameron Kinchens from Miami is my top safety right now. He's someone I'm looking at in round 2. Javon Bullard from Georgia is a little bit undersized, but he's, athletic. He's intelligent. He attacks the ball well. Kalen Bullock from USC. He's a little bit wiry, but he's like 6'2", 6'3", also very good ball skills. Any of those guys in round 2, whether it's, however the Bears acquire a second round pick, I feel like they will somehow.
Yeah.
Whether, it's trading Fields, whether it's trading down from one of their first round picks, whatever the case may be. I do think they're going to pick in round 2. And if they still have a need at safety there, those 3 could be guys to watch. A little bit farther down the board, I'm probably going to go in like that round 4, round 5 range. Malik Mustafa out of Wake Forest is someone. He's a bit undersized, but another, sharp as nails safety on the back end, processes real quickly, fluid athlete. Tyke Smith from Georgia is someone that I've been high on for some time. He's been a good contributor for Georgia for most of his collegiate career. And then Evan Williams out of Oregon is someone that I've really come to like over the last few weeks, especially. He was a late addition to the Senior Bowl, kind of flew under the radar in a lot of circles. And then once he got the invite, I watched him and I'm like, okay, there's something there. He's someone I think would also fit kind of that rangy type of, could be a center fielder, can play single high. I like him a lot as a free safety in 2 high where he's got all the space to work with. Those are just a couple guys in this class. Again, I don't think there's anyone who's going to go first round at safety in this class, but there are a handful of guys I think could contribute at the next level. So there have been worse classes at safety. And if the Bears if the Bears need to invest in a safety, I feel like, it's not like they're entirely out of options.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way the roster is constructed now, a move's going to happen. And plus Bears, not just Bears, all NFL teams, they go DB and on day 3. You always want to have those guys churning out stuff. Those are your core special teamers as well. So you find a lot of guys in there. But now with Eddie Jackson being released, all of a sudden it changes things for the Bears. Although we kind of saw this coming, I think a lot of people did. He tweeted about it. I think it was last week, probably around the time he had his exit interview. Possibly might have even been that far back. I'm not sure when the tweet was out, but the writing was on the wall for him. He kind of saw it there. So safety's going to happen. And if, we have seen in years past, safeties have had a chance to play right away for the Bears. They've played, Brisker. They played Gordon early at corner. They played Stevenson at corner. So these guys, this regime, if they do draft a safety, even if he's later in the draft, if he comes in and wins a job, I think they'll play the rookie if that's what they got here, because that's in their DNA. The hits philosophy. If they fit it and you feel that guy can do it, I think they're going to go there. Of course, we got a question about the quarterback. Scotty asks, do you see Mahomes-like qualities from Caleb in the 0 to 9 and 10 to 20 yard range, that short to intermediate route here? Scotty says he feels that's what makes Mahomes great, that he is automatic in those yardages. And that's one thing we see from Fields. He misses some of the layups. A guy like Mahomes does not miss the layups. Do you see that stuff, the short stuff? Do you see that out of Caleb Williams?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm going to quote this. I don't remember who said it. I don't remember what the number is, so this might be totally irresponsible of me. But I want to say, I think it might have been Start Kyle Orton, who charted a lot of the quarterback's performance in this draft class. And if I'm not mistaken, Caleb was the top quarterback from those short yard ranges. And I think the issue not the issue with Caleb, but I think something he needs to work on is knowing when to take the check down, when to take the safety blanket underneath. And that's something where when he's done that, he's very good at it. It's just a matter of, I think it's a mentality thing where he needs to become a little bit more comfortable in, accepting the second or third read instead of looking for the big play all the time, which at times that big play mentality can be tremendous. And that's part of what makes Caleb a special player. But, there are some times where, he tries to force things that aren't there. He trusts his arm a little too much, trusts his legs a little too much for, as talented as he is, there's some throws you just can't physically make. So I do think that Caleb is very accurate from a short yardage perspective. It's just a matter of if he can consistently drill it into his head to get there. And I feel like that's something Mahomes obviously got way better at over the course of his career. And I think that's what's helped him take that next step from just, big armed gunslinger to someone who can make all the big throws, but is also a field general who can, distribute the ball well. And I think that's going to be a hurdle for Caleb. I think he can do it. By all accounts, he's a very competitive guy, and I feel like in the right situation, he should be able to get better at that. So the accuracy is definitely there with Caleb in short yardage situations. The decision making still a little bit of a work in progress, but when he gets it right, he can be automatic.
He is your top quarterback on your board.
Yeah.
So let's just get that out there. And I think the Mahomes comp from a lot of people in the national media, a lot of the people that do this nationally, I think they throw that out there because fans love comps. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Most draft analysts give comps. That's what they do. A lot of fans are upset at the term generational. I haven't really heard anyone use generational about him in a long time. I think it was something to kind of throw out there early in his collegiate career. Yeah. But he's still the top quarterback in the class. And like I said, it just makes sense right now for the Bears to make that swing, because if they're not sure, this is what it comes down to with the Bears. If you think Fields is the guy that's going to take you to a Super Bowl, you've got 3 years of film on him in NFL offenses, although it's, he had some issues, obviously, with what's been his surrounding cast. Yeah. But if Poles thinks he's the guy, then he's going to keep. If he's not sure, then you got to move off him. And if it's May, if it's, like you said, Daniels, whoever it may be, it's going to happen here. But let me ask you this: how much of Caleb's decision making and stuff and his big game hunting you think is a product of the air raid? Because it's a lot of it is run to grass. He's waiting for stuff to open, which is some of the same complaints we heard about Justin Fields in college. He didn't run the air raid, but the scheme he was in, a lot of long developing plays, waiting for stuff to happen. So now as a Bears fan, we're like, oh my God, why would we do this again? We just went through this with a guy that struggled with this. So why is Caleb worth a different shot?
Yeah, so I do think that obviously the offense, there are some similarities in terms of, spreading the field with, formations, allowing for some of those longer, like you said, longer developing plays. And that can result in sometimes where, Caleb holds onto the ball, for a long amount of time that might not always be super translatable to the NFL level. It will be sometimes, but I don't think to the full extent that it is for him in college. That said, I think that it's a concern that some people have brought up. Oh, Fields took too long to throw. Caleb sometimes takes too long to throw. Why are you doing that again? Yeah. I think I think Caleb coming out is a more talented passer than Fields was coming out of Ohio State. And considering that, along with the fact, I feel like Fields as an asset has become less valuable over the last 3 years, solely from the fact that there's the financial aspect. Like, he's grown. He's definitely gotten better as a player over the last 3 years, but as an asset, as someone who only has 1 year left on his rookie contract, you're probably only going to get a second round pick and another draft pick in addition for him. Whereas, you're seeing the Bears back in 2021, you're moving up 9 spots from 20 to 11, and you're giving up a first round pick. You're giving up additional draft capital. So I feel like from a pure placing of value on an asset perspective, Williams is the more valuable piece at this point. I think that the arm talent is incredible. Caleb, I think he'll enter the league. He can still be a top 10 athlete at the quarterback position. He's no Fields. I don't really think any other quarterback's as athletic as Fields other than Lamar Jackson. So you're going from an elite athlete to a very, still a very good, I'd say a great athlete, Caleb Williams. I feel like probably won't run a 40-yard dash, but I'd expect him to be somewhere in the, the 4.6, maybe 4.5 range. That's still very good.
Yeah.
So the arm talent, the accuracy, I think he's a much better decision maker than a lot of people give him credit for. I think that, sometimes he played hero ball too much at USC, but sometimes he had to play hero ball too much because the offensive line didn't hold up, because the receivers couldn't get open, especially in 2023. I mean, Taj Washington's the only receiver who consistently could separate in that group. Brendan Rice, as physically gifted as he is, he's raw. Mario Williams, Dorian Singer didn't have the, as nearly as good of seasons as many people expected them to. They're both coming back to school, both going to different schools. I don't know exactly where. And then the Branch guy, he's still young, so he's still raw. So to that point, I think that yes, there are valid concerns with Caleb. I'm not saying there aren't. I feel like, you can look at him and say, oh, there's, very clearly room for improvement, but I feel like some of it's situational. I feel like some of it is on him, but at the same time, I feel like he's shown that he can go through full field reads. He's shown that he can identify the check down, not all the time, but more than I think people give him credit for. So I think he's a much smarter quarterback than people give him credit for, even if there's still room for improvement there. That and the arm talent, that and the athleticism, and the value of a quarterback on a rookie deal, which is the most valuable asset in football. I think it's – I don't want to say a no-brainer because, I get why people like Fields. I really do. I like him myself. I just think that Williams is, pretty strongly the clear choice here for me.
That's what a lot of the national buzz is. Like I said, we'll find out more. Combine, things will ramp up when they have a chance to meet these guys. Butthead's chiming in. Jacob, you know Beavis and Butthead? You know who they are?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Just want to make sure you're a little younger here, so I have to make sure. He said he's been enjoying the roster turnover series. I'm running a roster turnover series every position by position. Yeah. He's asking about special teams return man. Kick returner obviously is not really, it's phased out of the game, but the Bears have had horrible punt returners the last couple of years. Obviously, Velus Jones tried it, couldn't catch. They had to sign Trent Taylor just because he could field the punt, but he had no juice back there. Yeah. Are there any draft pick? We're talking about double dipping at receiver. Yeah. Who are some guys that can kind of step in as maybe a late round guy that could kind of fill their role of punt returner?
Yeah, so I do think, I know I mentioned Taj Washington out of USC. He's a little bit smaller, shiftier guy. He's someone I do think could step into a bigger role and, be a solid returner. And USC didn't need a ton out of him, but it's something he can do. There's Kenny Logan Jr. is a safety out of Kansas. I think he's someone who can provide some good value on that end. I know, like you did mention, obviously, Velus Jones Jr. hasn't really panned out. Trent Taylor didn't really pan out when they brought him in. I'm trying to think here off the top of my head. A couple other ones. Tyrone Tracy, a running back from Purdue. He's someone who he got to perform at the Shrine Bowl. Just a fluid athlete. He's capable of catching passes out of the backfield, and he returned one back for a touchdown this year. So those are just a handful of guys. I'm sure there are more. I'd have to go back in my notes to truly double check, but those are just a handful of guys that I think could be reliable kick returners at the next level. And then also you could try your shot with a speedy running back or a speedy receiver, even if they don't have a ton of experience at the collegiate level as a kick returner. So
you talk about running back real quick, and the Bears are of course losing Deontay Foreman.
Yeah.
But they still got Khalil Herbert under contract. They have Travis Homer and of course Roschon Johnson. But we saw them last year carry 4 running backs on the 53 most of the season. If there's a guy there, like you said, a speed guy that kind of comes in, plays some special teams for you, because Travis Homer only has 1 year left in his deal. He's your special teamer, but he's not really a return guy. He has done some kick return. I don't think he can do punt returns for you, but if there's a running back, is there any running backs you like kind of in the late rounds that kind of come in and maybe fill a speed role for Chicago?
No, definitely. And I know that Tyrone Tracy is someone that I brought up that I do like. Bucky Irving out of Oregon is a pretty popular name for, that round 3, round 4 kind of range. I feel like that's the consensus of where he's going to go. He's one of the most explosive athletes in this class, I think, regardless of position, but especially at running back. A little bit, I think, later, Blake Watson out of Memphis is someone that I like. Maybe round 6, round 7, might go undrafted. I mean, I'd use a pick on him, but still another late round explosive type. Some other guys that I do like, Jalen Wright out of Tennessee is someone I think is going to go round 2 or so. He's a little bit raw in terms of how he processes out of the backfield, but he's just a dynamic athlete who, he plays hard as a pass protector. So that's something that's going to be valuable. And then 2 running backs out of Louisville who are more late round guys. Jawar Jordan is the Lightning, and Isaac Garendo is the Thunder. Jordan's more of a shifty type of side to side type of running back, but Garendo is the type of guy. He's not super shifty, but he runs fast in a straight line, and he's massive. He's like 220, and he's powerful. So those are just a couple guys. Irving obviously being the highest rank of the bunch. Jalen Wright not too far behind. But they're going to have options. Yeah. And if they want to draft a running back, which I think they should, just historically speaking, it's a nice, flyer to take early on day 3, just because of how many, end up contributing from around that range. So those are a couple of running backs that I think could fit that kind of speed demon sort of role.
You mentioned Grendo as more as the Thunder. And I actually watched a little bit of this film because Kyrie Thompson interviewed him down at the Shrine Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's actually, you guys can check out. It's on the podcast channel, Windy City Gridiron podcast channel. Just find that. Scroll back. I think that happened right after East-West game. So that was probably like 2 weeks ago. But he interviewed him. So I kind of went back and kind of want to watch some of his film. And like you said, he's not the fastest, but straight line speed's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you're running an outside zone scheme, like it seems like Shane Waldron's going to kind of bring in here, a little closer to what the Bears want to have. That's what you want, man. Get to your mark, make your cut, and hit the hole. One cut, go. And I think a guy like Garendo might be a good fit there.
100%. And I think that's the best fit for him at the next level is, just a one cut back. He's not the type of guy who's going to bounce outside the tackles and consistently make guys miss in space, but get him in a straight line. He's a bigger back. He's quick, he's strong, and he's someone I think could, really make some sort of an impact at the next level. I think he's a little bit of a later round guy. I think the ball carrier vision is still a work in progress, and obviously the sideline to sideline agility is, it's just okay, but he's quick in a straight line and he's powerful. So if he finds an open running lane, it's going to be tough to stop him.
We got Cloudy Future here, longtime WCG guy in the comment section, taking a shot at my gray beard over here. If you guys watching it on YouTube, asking if it's from reading all the Fields versus Williams stuff on social media and at WCG. Cloudy, man, I don't really pay attention to it because I just don't get into it. It's like, to me, we're all fans of the Bears. To me, it's silly. If anyone gets too over the top and they get too ridiculous with their just making up stuff to be dumbasses, I mute them, man. I got no time for the bullshit, to be honest with you. Like, if you can't just be a fan of the team and understand there's a path here and see the logic behind what may happen, are you going to stop being a fan if they trade your favorite player, or if they decide to keep a guy that you don't like? It's going to happen whether we're fans or not. So I don't get caught up in the BS here. Another question here we got real quick from, where'd it go? I just had it here. Where'd it go? About Brock Bowers, ML Fields. How high will Brock Bowers? Here's another guy, man. Like I said, I don't grind tape, but there's some guys I like, and I've always liked the tight end position. So when there's a good tight end, I like to watch him. How high is Brock Bowers getting taken?
I think the earliest he goes is the 5th pick with the Chargers. I think that's the highest he might end up going. And I got to double check exactly where I have him right now on my board. I'm pretty sure I have him in my top 5. I truly do think that he's one of the best players in this class, regardless of position. He's an elite athlete. He's a rare, 6'4", about 240 pounds. I think he's someone who's going to run really fast in the 40, super agile after the catch, a very good route runner. He's someone who can separate outside out of the slot as an H-back, as an inline guy. You could play him as a fullback if you want. Just a real offensive weapon. And obviously, historically speaking, a lot of tight ends don't go in the top 10. A lot of them don't go in the top 5.
Yeah.
But I think Bowers is a special talent there. Not as big as, not as, as big of a prospect as, say, a Kyle Pitts coming out of Florida, but I'd argue he's a bit more athletic. And if you're looking for a guy like that, who can really step in and have that all-pro ceiling, I know a lot of people have compared him to George Kittle, and I think Kittle is, he's a tremendous blocker. I think Bowers is just all right at that. But in terms of receiving upside, I 100% see it with Bowers.
Yeah.
So I think the highest he goes is 5 to the Chargers. He'll be an option there. The lowest he could go is maybe in the mid to late teens, maybe a team like the Colts at 15, or probably not the Seahawks, but the Bengals at 18 or something like that. Those are a couple teams where I think that's probably the lowest he'll go. The highest, I could see him going 5, though. I think he's that good of a player, and if they did take him at 5, I wouldn't really bat an eye. I'd be like, all right, that makes sense, because I think that's how good his tape is.
Let's stay on tight ends. MC Fack here said he does not see the Bears taking a tight end early, but I think tight end's a sneaky need for this team because, you have Cole Kmet. He's clearly your inline guy. He's your wide tight end.
Yeah.
But Shane Waldron last year used 3 tight end set quite a bit. Now, part of it is because that's what he had to do. He felt that's what was best for his offense. So Waldron will kind of do what he wants to do here as far as what his talent dictates. But who's your move tight end on the roster? Robert Tunyon's a free agent. He's probably gone. He was a Getsy guy, Yeah. Who are some nice move tight ends the Bears could kind of target maybe late? They can kind of come in and find a role on this team.
Yeah. So, and to that point, real quick, before I dive into some of the later round guys, I don't think I'm totally saying no to Bowers at 9, or if they trade back. I think he should be an option. I wouldn't say he's going to be the top option by any means, but I feel like he's more of an offensive weapon than a true tight end, to the point where you can line him up anywhere. And I feel like his value exceeds that of the traditional tight end. So just to that point, but there are a couple guys, a little bit farther down the board that I do like. Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State is someone that I'm a big fan of. He performed really well against my Missouri Tigers, and he, put together a very good season after that. Another one of those, not the biggest, not the strongest, but he's athletic. He's a natural pass catcher. Jaheim Bell is someone I like out of Florida State. He's another one of those tight ends, not the biggest. He's about 6'3", I want to say like 230. So he's pretty small, but very good athlete, has a penchant for getting open, natural pass catcher. He's produced pretty well at the collegiate level. And then some other guys I like. Theo Johnson from Penn State is someone that I think I have him just outside of my top 5. I know some people have him in their top 5 at the tight end position, but another good athlete, another natural, maybe not as explosive, but still, very good ball skills, above average athlete. And then one other guy I'll point to is I kind of like Dallin Holker, tight end out of Colorado State. He's someone where I really just like his ball skills. I like how natural of a pass catcher he is. Not the fastest, not the strongest. He's like 6'5". He's a little bit lighter at 235 for the tight end position, but he's someone who he can win in the red zone. He's someone who can beat you at the catch point. He's someone who can make those catches in tight windows, and he's someone who's physical at the point of attack. So Dallin Holker, he was I want to say might have been like a second-team All-American or something. I know he was super productive at Colorado State this year, but he's another guy I like. They'll have options, and I'm with you in that tight end maybe isn't the biggest need, but it's definitely one I think they'll have to address at some point, because they need a U tight end. They need that tight end too. And however they do it, they need to have some sort of new faces getting involved there.
I would love to see Mercedes Lewis come back, just because I love the old man blocking. That's awesome.
Oh, me too.
But then, man, you got to get you got to get a move, Joker, whatever you want to call that guy. You got to get that spot. I told you to keep you about an hour, so I'm going to have time for one more here. And it's a little receiver, little quarterback. Jacob, did Tez Walker's mediocre Senior Bowl make you more impressed with what Drake May was able to do with almost nothing?
So I will say that you're looking at Devontae Walker coming over. The 1 year at North Carolina, was really good at Kent State before. The Senior Bowl wasn't tremendous. I feel like that's something where I was expecting a little bit more out of him. during his time at Mobile, but I wouldn't say it was terrible. I feel like I've gotten a couple of replies saying that, Walker is too high on my rankings. He didn't perform well at the Senior Bowl, and he didn't live up to expectations, sure, but I still feel like the tape trumps all with him.
Yeah.
He's a good route runner. He's an above average athlete with, very good just length and ball skills. And he's someone who can get open, even if he's not the most polished route runner. He's athletic enough to get away with it. He's shown that he has some understanding of how to attack leverage through his stems. And, I do think some drops are going to need to be cleaned up with him. Might need to gain a little bit more weight, but I think he's still a very talented player. And to that point with Drake May, I feel like, especially in 2022, you're not really working with a whole lot. Sam Howell had De'Ami Brown, had Daz Newsome.
Daz, the Bears legend.
Yeah, Daz. And then, freaking forgot about him. And, Drake May did have Josh Downs last year, who's, had a very good year.
Yeah.
And then this year, Devontae Walker. But at the same time, Walker only played in a handful of games because he had issues with eligibility coming out. So to start the year, he didn't really have a super strong wide receiver one. And outside of Downs, there wasn't really a whole lot in 2022 for him. So, I'm impressed with what May was able to do with his circumstances. I think that not enough people within Bears Twitter are talking about him. I don't think he's going to be the number one pick. I don't think he's going to be a Chicago Bear, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot to like with him, and the tools are there. The tape is there for him to be a very good player in the NFL. Will that happen? Obviously, time will tell, but I feel like, all things considered, what May was able to do in North Carolina was very impressive.
Last question, and I'm going to throw this one at you.
Boom.
Justin Fields, obviously the Bears quarterback now.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams seems like going to be the guy. Of all these rookie quarterbacks that are coming out here, how many of those would you take over Fields right now? And this is talk about, let's say it's a guy like Bo Nix, and of course they're going to trade Fields. They're going to have draft picks for that. They're going to trade off one. They're going to go back. So I know it's a big question, but all things considered, if Poles decides, hey, Fields ain't my guy, who could be his guy? If it's not Fields,
the only I'd move off of two guys in this class. That's Caleb Williams and Drake May.
Okay,
I'd move on. I'd move on from Fields for either one of those two. After that, it starts to become murky because I do like the quarterback value in this class. I think Michael Penix Jr. has really good tape. I feel like he's one of the best pure passers in college football in this class, but again, it comes down to he's a little bit older as a prospect, has a massive injury history, and he's not super athletic. How high is the ceiling there? How much is that going to translate? Sure, I think he can be a solid starter in the league. Can he be much more than that? And if not, where do you draft someone like that who already has those injury concerns? JJ McCarthy is someone that I do like. I've been a fan of his for quite some time. I admit I'm probably higher on him than most just because he's a very divisive prospect. I feel like, parts of draft Twitter, people who are, like plugged into the community say there's a good chance he goes top 10. Would I take him in the top 10? I don't think I would, but I would definitely take him first round.
Well, you mentioned you're higher than most. You're not higher than his former coach. You said he's the best quarterback prospect.
Yeah. I'm not quite there.
Okay.
I'm not quite there. But he is my QB3 right now, which so I have him over Penix, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, who's my QB4. I know that Daniels is catching a lot of smoke right now, and he obviously had a very good year this year. I'm just a little wary because it took him a while starting in college to get to a high level. He had however many seasons, 4 years of starting tape before this year. And, he was solid. He was on my radar as a draft prospect. I didn't see him as much more than a late round pick though. It took him a long time to break out. A lot of those quarterbacks in college, don't necessarily translate to being stars in the NFL. So is that someone you want to take in the top 3 where there's a little bit of risk there? And just comparing him with Fields, I mean, Daniels is a tremendous athlete, and I think obviously the value of a rookie quarterback contract is very good.
Yeah.
And I think Daniels is one of the more accurate passers in this class, but Fields has the better arm. Fields is significantly bigger than Daniels. And I think athleticism is a massive part of Daniels' game, but I think Fields is better in that regard too. So I'd take Justin Fields over Jaden Daniels. I don't know if the league agrees with me on that. That's just my opinion on the matter. So Williams and May, I'd move off of Fields from, and that's what I think the Bears should do. Having the number 1 overall pick, they have the opportunity to do that. But say if the Bears picked at 3 or anywhere else with that Carolina pick, I'm probably sticking with Fields.
Yeah. Circumstance, man. It's just what happens. It's just a weird situation. So, Jacob, I appreciate you jumping on, man. Everyone, make sure you follow Jacob at Jacob Infante 24. He's got the probably the best Twitter account of most of Bears Twitter. Definitely the best Twitter account of all the WCG guys. He's always throwing some stuff out there. Has a lot of fun with that. Of course, you can find all his stuff on our site as well. Do you have any shows coming up? I know you guest on a lot of stuff. Do you have anything coming up you want to plug?
Not set in stone.
Next Thursday, you are going to be back here.
That's true.
On Bare Bones.
I am going to be on Bare Bones. Mason West is going to be having me, and I think Kyrie's going to be on.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hop on with those guys next week.
Mock draft. That'll be a mock draft for you guys.
That's going to be my first mock draft of this pre-draft process, like on a show. So yeah. I love doing those kinds of shows. I only do a couple, but that should be a fun one, especially with those guys. Yeah. I love working with them. So should be a good one. But other than that, keep an eye out because I'm always doing something. Whether it's super regular or sporadic, I'm going to make appearances on podcasts, on shows, whatever, leading up to the draft. So definitely make sure to stay tuned.
Just follow him on Twitter. That way you don't miss none of his stuff. So,
yeah.
For Jacob, I'm Lester. I want to appreciate you guys all jumping in. Until next time, bear down, my friends.